I never thought the cruelest words I'd ever hear would come from my own mother's mouth. But when she looked me dead in the eye and said my 9-year-old autistic son was too weird for Christmas dinner, I realized that protecting him meant finally standing up to the woman who had spent my entire life tearing me down. My name is Zara. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how I discovered that sometimes the monsters we fear most are the ones who raised us. Before we dive into the story, I have a quick favor to ask. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single twist in our revenge stories. We drop new videos every single day. Now, let's get back to the story. To understand how my mother could say such devastating things about her own grandson, you need to know something about me first. Something I spent years trying to forget. I was 7 years old when my father died. Heart attack. It was sudden and brutal. One moment he was teaching me to ride my bike in our driveway, promising me ice cream if I could make it to the mailbox without falling. The next moment, paramedics were carrying him away on a stretcher while I stood there in my pink bicycle helmet, still waiting for that ice cream. My mother never said it directly, but I felt it in every interaction afterward. The way she'd look at me with those hollow eyes. The way conversations would die when I entered a room. The way she'd flinch when I laughed too loud, as if joy itself was somehow offensive to her grief. She blamed me. Not with words, she was too calculated for that, but with silence, with distance, with the kind of emotional neglect that leaves scars you can't see but feel every single day. I was her only child, and instead of holding me closer after losing Dad, she pushed me away. As if loving me would somehow betray his memory. As if my very existence reminded her of everything she'd lost. Growing up in that house was like walking on glass. Every emotion had to be measured, controlled, appropriate. Every achievement was met with cool acknowledgement instead of pride. Every mistake was evidence of my fundamental inadequacy. I learned early that love was conditional, and mine apparently came with conditions I could never quite meet. When I turned 18, I left for college and barely looked back. Built a life 2 states away. Found friends who laughed at my jokes. Dated men who didn't make me feel like an inconvenience. Eventually met Emmanuel, kind, patient Emmanuel, who became my husband and showed me what unconditional love actually looked like. But even distance couldn't completely heal those wounds. When I called my mother to tell her I was pregnant, her response wasn't congratulations. It was, "I hope you're more prepared for this than you think you are." When Liam was born, something shifted in me. Holding this perfect, tiny human, I made a promise that he would never, ever question whether he was wanted, whether he was loved, whether he belonged. Liam came into the world like a bright spark of pure curiosity. Even as a baby, he noticed everything. The way shadows moved across walls, the patterns in ceiling fans, the exact sound the coffee maker made each morning. As he grew, his fascination with the world around him only intensified. By age 3, it was clear Liam saw the world differently. He could memorize entire train schedules, but struggled with eye contact. He spoke in elaborate, formal sentences about his favorite subjects, but melted down if his routine changed unexpectedly. He flapped his hands when excited and made soft, humming sounds when processing information. The diagnosis came when he was 4, autism spectrum disorder. High-functioning, brilliant, and beautifully unique. To me, it explained everything wonderful about him. His incredible memory, his attention to detail, his genuine kindness toward everyone he met. Liam wasn't broken, he was extraordinary. My mother's reaction to the diagnosis was telling. Not sadness, not concern for her grandson's well-being, but something that looked almost like vindication. As if Liam's differences confirmed some long-held belief about defectiveness running in our family. The comments started small, passive-aggressive observations disguised as concern. "He's getting bigger. Don't you think he's too old to be making those noises? Other children his age don't need so many accommodations. Are you sure all this? Special treatment is really helping him." I deflected, made excuses, tried to educate her about autism. Sent her articles, books, resources, anything to help her understand that Liam's brain just worked differently, and that was okay. More than okay, it was beautiful. But she wasn't interested in understanding. She was interested in conformity, in appearances, in having a grandson who reflected well on her at her church gatherings and neighborhood parties. When Liam was 6, we attended a family barbecue. He was having a wonderful time, sitting cross-legged on the grass, organizing my uncle's collection of vintage bottle caps by color and year. His joy was infectious. He kept calling relatives over to show them patterns he'd discovered, his face absolutely glowing with excitement. I watched my mother approach him, and something in her expression made my stomach drop. She knelt beside him, and I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw Liam's smile fade. Saw his hands stop moving. Saw him look around confused, as if trying to figure out what he'd done wrong. When I asked her later what she'd said to him, she shrugged it off. Just suggested he might want to play with the other children instead of sitting alone with trash. Trash. She'd called his careful, methodical, beautiful organization of those bottle caps something that brought him pure joy, trash. That night, Liam asked me, "Mommy, why doesn't Grandma like the way I play?" I held him close and promised him there was nothing wrong with the way he played. Nothing wrong with him, period. But inside, something hardened. A protective wall building itself around my heart. The incidents multiplied. During holiday dinners, she'd make pointed comments about his table manners. When he got overwhelmed by noise and needed a quiet moment, she'd mutter about children who couldn't handle normal family gatherings. When he'd share fascinating facts about his current special interest, whether it was astronomy or ancient Egypt or the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies, she'd roll her eyes and change the subject. But what really broke my heart was watching Liam try to win her approval. He'd bring her his favorite books to show her. He'd save interesting rocks he found for her. He'd remember her birthday and carefully select gifts he thought she'd love. And every single time, she'd receive his offerings with barely concealed irritation. "That's nice, dear," she'd say in that flat tone that meant anything but. Looking back, I realized my phone had become an archive of cruelty. Text messages where she'd complain about having to deal with his quirks during visits. Voicemails where she'd suggest I look into options for children like Liam. Years of messages questioning my parenting choices, my patience, my decision to advocate for my son rather than force him to mask his autism. Part of me kept hoping she'd change. That somehow, if I just found the right words or the right approach, I could help her see Liam the way I did. The way everyone else did. His teachers adored him. His classmates thought he was the smartest kid in school. Our neighbors would stop by just to hear his latest discoveries about the world around him. But my mother seemed determined to see him as damaged goods. Last Thanksgiving was the turning point. Liam, now 9, had spent weeks preparing to share his latest passion project, a detailed presentation about different types of clouds and weather patterns. He'd made drawings, created charts, even written a little poem about cumulus clouds that made me cry with its simple beauty. During dinner, he shyly asked if he could share his project with everyone. The whole table lit up. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone was genuinely excited to see what Liam had created. Everyone except my mother. "For heaven's sake," she said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Can't we have one family dinner without turning it into a classroom? Some of us came here to relax, not get lectured by a 9-year-old about the weather." The table went silent. Liam's face crumpled. He carefully gathered his papers and whispered, "I'm sorry, Grandma, I didn't mean to bother anyone." That's when I knew. Watching my brilliant, sensitive, amazing son apologize for sharing his joy, for being exactly who he was supposed to be, I knew this couldn't continue. But I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. December 15th. I remember the exact date because it's burned into my memory like a brand. I was at work when my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen, and foolishly, I hoped maybe she was calling to apologize for Thanksgiving. Maybe she'd had time to reflect on how her words had hurt Liam. I should have known better. "Zara, we need to talk about Christmas." Her voice had that particular tone, the one she'd used my entire childhood when she was about to deliver news that would leave me feeling small and unwanted. "What about Christmas, Mom?" "Well, I've been thinking, and I don't think it's appropriate for Liam to attend this year." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually had to sit down. "What do you mean, not appropriate?" "Zara, be realistic. He makes everyone uncomfortable. All that stimming and those noises and his outbursts, it's too much." This is supposed to be a peaceful family gathering, not a therapy session. I felt something ice cold spreading through my chest. He doesn't have outbursts, Mom. He has meltdowns when he's overwhelmed, and we manage them just fine. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Managing, I'm 63 years old, Zara. I shouldn't have to spend Christmas Day walking on eggshells around a child who can't behave normally. He's not misbehaving, he's autistic. That's what I mean. Maybe it's time you considered other arrangements. There are facilities, Zara, places with people trained to deal with children like that, people who know how to handle these situations properly. The phone slipped in my hand. I couldn't have heard her correctly. Are you suggesting I put my son in an institution? I'm suggesting you think about what's best for everyone involved, including Liam. He might be happier somewhere he fits in better. I stood up so fast my chair spun away from my desk. Around me, my coworkers continued typing, answering phones, living their normal Tuesday afternoon lives while mine imploded. Mom, he's your grandson. And you're my daughter, and I'm trying to help you see reality here. You can't expect the whole world to accommodate his issues forever. His issues. As if autism was something shameful, instead of simply a different way of experiencing the world. So you're banning him from Christmas. I'm setting reasonable boundaries. You're welcome to come, of course. Maybe it would be good for you to have a break from all of that. All of that. She was talking about my son like he was a burden I needed a vacation from. And what exactly am I supposed to tell Liam? That grandma doesn't want him around because he's too weird. The silence stretched between us, and I held my breath, praying she'd backtrack. Praying she'd realize how cruel she sounded. Instead, she said, I never used that word. But that's what you mean, isn't it? Another pause. Then, in a voice so cold it could have frozen fire. I mean that some children require more than I'm willing to give at this stage of my life. And if that makes me a bad person in your eyes, so be it. I hung up without saying goodbye. For the next hour, I sat in my office crying. Not just for Liam, but for the little girl inside me who was still waiting for her mother to choose her. Still hoping that someday, love wouldn't have to be earned through perfection. When I got home that evening, Liam was at the kitchen table working on his homework, humming softly to himself. Emmanuel was helping him with math, and they were both giggling about something. This beautiful, normal, perfect family moment. Mommy, Liam looked up with that radiant smile that never failed to make my day brighter. I finished my geography project. Wanna see? He'd created a detailed map of our state, complete with topographical features and climate zones. It was higher-level work from a 9-year-old who happened to find geography fascinating. It's incredible, sweetheart. I hugged him close, breathing in his familiar scent of apple shampoo and pencil erasers. You're incredible. That night, after Liam was asleep, I told Emmanuel what had happened. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally, a protective fury that matched my own. She actually said he should be in a facility. Her exact words were that there are places with people trained to deal with children like that. Emmanuel ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as him trying to contain his temper. Zara, this is insane. Liam is the sweetest, smartest, most loving kid I know. The idea that anyone, let alone his own grandmother, would see him as a problem to be solved. I know. Are you going to tell him? That was the question that had been torturing me all evening. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that his grandmother doesn't want him around? How do you protect a child from that kind of rejection without lying to him? I don't know how. But I didn't have to figure it out that night, because the next morning, my mother made the decision for me. Liam was eating breakfast, methodically arranging his cereal into color-coordinated groups like he did every morning, when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mother. I hope you've had time to think about what I said. I'm not trying to be cruel, but everyone has limits. Maybe this is an opportunity for Liam to learn that the world won't always accommodate his needs. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. Something final and irrevocable. But then Liam looked up from his cereal and said, Mommy, how many more days until we go to Grandma's for Christmas? I'm working on a special present for her. My heart broke clean in half. What kind of present, baby? He smiled conspiratorially. It's a secret, but I've been researching her favorite flowers, and I'm going to make her a whole book about gardenias. With pictures and fun facts, and even a poem I wrote myself. This beautiful, generous child was creating a thoughtful, personal gift for someone who just spent 20 minutes on the phone explaining why he wasn't welcome in her home. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to tell Liam his grandmother had rejected him, but I wasn't going to pretend everything was normal either. It was time to stop protecting my mother from the consequences of her cruelty. It was time to start protecting my son instead. I spent the next week going through my phone, gathering what was already there. Every cruel text message, every dismissive voicemail, every passive-aggressive comment she'd made over the years about Liam. It was all there, preserved in digital format. Looking at it all compiled together was devastating. Years of systematic rejection of an innocent child, documented in her own words. But what really decided things for me was the message she sent 3 days before Christmas. "Zara, I assume you've come to your senses about Christmas Day. I've made arrangements for dinner at 2 p.m. Adult conversation only, please. I trust you'll find appropriate supervision for Liam." Appropriate supervision. For Christmas Day. As if my 9-year-old son was a dangerous animal who needed a handler. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. Part of me wanted to unleash years of suppressed anger, to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her conditional love and her decades of emotional manipulation. Instead, I wrote, "Thank you for finally showing me who you are." Then I started making plans of my own. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, with the kind of crystalline snow that makes everything look like a postcard. Liam woke up at his usual 6:47 a.m. He was nothing if not consistent, and found his presents arranged under our tree exactly the way he liked them, organized by size and wrapping paper color. Emmanuel and I watched him open each gift methodically, reading every card twice before carefully removing the tape so the wrapping paper wouldn't tear. His joy was infectious, pure, everything Christmas morning should be. At 10 a.m., while Liam was absorbed in building an elaborate train track that wound through our entire living room, I sat down at my laptop and began typing. The message I sent to our entire extended family was simple and straightforward. "Merry Christmas, everyone. I wanted to reach out before today's festivities to share something important with you all. As you know, Liam is on the autism spectrum. He's brilliant, kind, and brings incredible joy to everyone who takes the time to know him. Unfortunately, not everyone in our family sees him that way. I'm sharing this not to create drama, but because I believe in truth. And the truth is, some family members have made it clear that Liam isn't welcome at gatherings because his autism makes them uncomfortable. I won't name names or point fingers. Instead, I'll let you draw your own conclusions from the attached communications. These are real messages, real voicemails, real conversations that have taken place over the past years. Emmanuel, Liam, and I will be having Christmas dinner at our house this year. Anyone who wants to celebrate with love, acceptance, and genuine joy is welcome to join us. We'll have plenty of food and even more warmth. Anyone who prefers their family gatherings free of children who make noise or require accommodations is welcome to enjoy their peaceful, sterile celebrations elsewhere. Merry Christmas, and much love to those who deserve it." Then I put together everything that was already in my phone. Every screenshot, every voicemail, every message that showed exactly who she was when she thought no one was paying attention. I hit send and closed the laptop. At 11:30, my phone started ringing. First, it was my Aunt Linda, my mother's younger sister. "Zara, honey, I had no idea. I am so ashamed that I didn't see what was happening." Then my cousin Michael, "Jesus, Zara, I knew Mom was old-fashioned, but this is just cruel." Then my Uncle Bob, "That kid is a treasure. I can't believe anyone would treat him like this." By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly. Text messages, voicemails, missed calls. The family had seen the evidence and they were horrified. At 12:15, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 12:18, and 12:22, and 12:25. Finally, at 12:30, I answered. "How dare you?" Her voice was shaking with rage. "How dare you air our private family business like some kind of soap opera? Those weren't private family conversations, Mom. They were attacks on my son. I was trying to help you see reason. You were trying to convince me to abandon my child." "That's not, I never said." She was sputtering, probably for the first time in her 63 years finding herself without a cutting response. "You said he belonged in a facility. You said he made everyone uncomfortable. You banned him from Christmas because he's too weird. Your words, Mom, all of it. You had no right to share those messages, she replied. I had every right to protect my son from emotional abuse. And the family deserved to know the kind of person you are. The silence stretched between us, and I could practically hear her calculating her next move. My mother was nothing if not strategic. Fine, she said finally. Fine, you want to burn bridges. You want to destroy this family over your stubborn refusal to accept reality. Then live with the consequences, Zara. Live with them for the rest of your life. I already am, I said quietly, and I've never been happier. She hung up. At 1 p.m., there was a knock at our door. It was my Aunt Linda, carrying a casserole dish and fighting back tears. I brought green bean casserole, she said, and an apology that's years overdue. By 2 p.m., exactly when my mother's dinner was supposed to start, our house was full. My cousin Michael and his family, Uncle Tom and Aunt Susan, 3 of my second cousins I hadn't seen in years, and even Mrs. Peters from next door, who'd somehow heard about our impromptu gathering and showed up with homemade rolls. Liam was in heaven. He gave impromptu presentations about his latest interests to anyone who would listen. He organized games for the younger cousins. He showed off his train track and his rock collection and his book about gardenias that he'd made for his grandmother, the grandmother who didn't want him at her table. At 3 p.m., Aunt Linda pulled me aside. I called your mother's house to check on her, she said quietly, see how her dinner was going. And, she answered on the first ring, asked if I was coming over. Linda shook her head. Zara, she's alone, completely alone. Out of 23 people she invited, only 2 showed up, and they left early. I waited to feel something. Guilt maybe, regret, some sort of satisfaction at her isolation. Instead, I felt nothing but profound sadness. Not for her, but for the relationship we could have had if she'd just chosen love instead of judgment. She made her choice, I said finally. Yes, Linda agreed. And so did everyone else. That was 6 months ago. In the time since that Christmas, a lot has changed. My mother and I haven't spoken, and honestly, I don't miss the constant anxiety of wondering when her next cruel comment would come. Liam has stopped asking about Grandma, which breaks my heart, but also tells me everything I need to know about how her rejection affected him. The rest of our family has rallied around us in ways I never expected. Aunt Linda comes to Liam's school events now, cheering louder than anyone when he wins the science fair or gives a presentation. Uncle Tom takes him fishing every other weekend and patiently listens to detailed explanations about water ecosystems and fish migration patterns. My cousins include him in family game nights and birthday parties, treating his autism not as something to tolerate, but as simply part of who he is. Emmanuel and I started a support group for parents of autistic children in our church. Every month, families gather in our living room to share resources, celebrate victories, and remind each other that our children are perfect exactly as they are. The group has grown from 3 families to over 20, and watching those parents find their voices, find their strength, has been incredible. Liam is thriving. At school, his teachers tell me he's becoming more confident, more willing to share his ideas and interests. At home, he talks openly about his feelings and asks questions about the world with the kind of fearless curiosity that makes me proud to be his mother. He still flaps his hands when he's excited, still hums when he's processing information, still organizes his possessions in ways that make perfect sense to him. And he's still the most loving, generous, brilliant child I've ever known. Last week, he came home from school with a drawing he'd made in art class. It was our family, him, me, and Emmanuel, standing in front of our house with enormous smiles on our faces. At the bottom, in his careful 9-year-old handwriting, he'd written, "My family loves me." That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. My mother thought she could shame my son into silence, force him to hide who he was to make her more comfortable. She thought I'd be too afraid to speak up, too desperate for her approval to risk her rejection. She forgot that I'm his mother, and a mother's love doesn't come with conditions or asterisks or exceptions for neurological differences. A few weeks ago, I heard through family gossip that my mother had to step down from her leadership position at church after word got around about how she'd treated Liam. Her social circle, such as it was, began treating her with the same cold distance she'd shown my son. The neighbors she'd always tried so hard to impress started crossing the street to avoid conversations with her. I'm told she seems smaller now, lonelier, more brittle. Part of me wonders if she lies awake at night thinking about the brilliant grandson she cast aside, the daughter she chose judgment over. Part of me wonders if she regrets the choices that led to her spending holidays alone while her family gathers elsewhere, filling our home with the kind of unconditional love she never learned to give. But mostly, I don't think about her at all, because I'm too busy living in the present, raising a child who knows without question that he is wanted, loved, and celebrated exactly as he is. I'm too busy building a life where autism isn't something to hide or fix or apologize for, but simply another way of experiencing the incredible complexity of being human. Liam will never have to question whether he belongs in his own family. He'll never have to wonder if his differences make him less worthy of love. He'll never have to apologize for the way his brain works, or the way he expresses joy, or the way he sees patterns and connections that others miss. He'll grow up knowing that the people who matter most chose him, chose us, chose love over comfort, acceptance over appearances, truth over the easy lie that some children are simply too much work to embrace. My son deserves better than tolerance. He deserves celebration. And now, finally, that's exactly what he has. Sometimes the monsters we fear most are the ones who raised us. Sometimes the family that matters most isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop accepting crumbs of conditional love and start demanding the feast of acceptance every child deserves. I learned that lesson almost too late, but not quite, and that makes all the difference in the world. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your child and keeping peace with toxic family members? What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to share this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got more incredible revenge stories coming your way.